Welcome to what we think is going to be a great day. Thank you for doing all of your anti-snow dances. It mostly worked. When you live in Boston and you've had a winter of 9 feet of snow in 5 weeks one year, and you plan a meeting in Pittsburgh on January 29th, you need to do some anti-snow dances. So we invoked that for a number of you, and you came through. Thank you very much. What a gathering this is. We have, I'm going to just, people who know me would be nervous that I would take all 150 of us and have each of you introduce yourselves individually, because to me, knowing who is in a room together and building relationships is essential for moving change forward around common goals. So a main goal of today is to build relationships among people, some of whom already know each other, some of whom don't. Very different constituencies, all of which are necessary for moving forward on cancer prevention with a particular focus on environment. So just to note a few of the constituencies that we have in the room, we have a lot of clinicians. Some clinicians want to raise their hands. People who practice medicine, thank you. People who also practice cancer caring and counseling for people with cancer. Great, thank you. People who practice public health, who design and implement public health outreach programs. Great, thank you. Researchers, people who spend most of their time trying to understand why things are the way they are. Fantastic. Great. Other, which doesn't mean less important, but just doesn't fit into that neat box. Great, great. And I imagine those are people with community engagement experience and orientation, business engagement, sustainability. There really is a remarkable array of interest areas and skills and expertise in the room. And one of the themes for today is that we have a lot of fantastic speakers. You've seen who they are, and you're going to really enjoy what they have to say. We also have a lot of expertise in the room, and many of you could have been giving your own talk and have it be just as informative for people in the room. So we really want to bring your expertise, your experience, your lived experience, your perspectives into the room, and we're going to make every effort to do that as planned so that we move along and don't skimp on that opportunity. I want to just mention a few people who have been especially instrumental in making this day happen before we get started. Amanda Hernandez, who is maybe still out at registration, but works for Silent Spring Institute, is an assistant research scientist there, but also a fabulous, competent organizer, and has just done a lot for making this meeting happen. And Molly Jacobs, my partner in crime, who's somewhere being useful. There she is. An epidemiologist and also fantastic strategic thinker and organizer. Also colleagues at UMass Lowell, Dick Clapp and David Kriebel, and Rachel Massey at Toxic Use Reduction Institute. We also have a couple of people in the room who you're going to see a lot of, and I just want to acknowledge them and thank them. Mark Dixon is in the back of the room. Mark is going to be videoing this meeting, and we will be working with that material afterwards to think about how that could be useful for the different efforts that many of you have underway, and that hopefully new collaborative efforts that will come out of this meeting. And we know that communicating in language that is able to be heard by the audiences that we're trying to work with is really essential. So Mark, thank you for that material and also for your work with us afterward, curating all of that. Thanks to the Phipps Center. This is what a space. I've never been here before. We're going to give you 1/2 an hour at lunch to wander through the beautiful botanical gardens. I'm so grateful to all the Phipps folks for making this possible for us to have this here. We also have a number of supporting organizations, and I'm not going to go through them all, but they are on the symposium website, and again, a broad range of organizations that have been helpful to us, and individuals from those organizations who have served on an advisory committee, and we're very appreciative of that, a number of you in the room. So the meeting has an arc to it, and you'll see how that's unfolding. But we've thought a lot about where do we need to start and where are we trying to get. So we're asking you, if at all possible, to really stick with these sessions. One of the challenges and opportunities of this meeting is the diversity. It means that in the more science-oriented sessions, some of you will be thinking about your child's soccer practice a little bit more than others. In the more strategic conversations, those of you that really love to do your research may be finding yourself a little bit less attuned to that. We really invite you to bring as much energy as you can to all the sessions, because the more we understand about the different arenas that we all work in, the more effective we can be together. Each of the sessions builds on the previous session. So again, if you are able to factor in what came before and process where you are now, we think we'll get to the end of the day with a really exciting experience and also some ways forward. So one of the supporting organizations that's been so helpful in the planning of this is the Hillman Cancer Center. And I want to give Jim Herman a chance to come up and give his perspective on the meeting and his welcome.
Well, thank you, Polly. And it's indeed a pleasure to be here and to welcome all of you to Pittsburgh that are not from the area. And for those from Pittsburgh, thank you for coming and participating in this. Polly's thanked many of the people who have helped, but I would like to thank her and her team, because this is really, I think, an outstanding gathering of people from many different orientations and backgrounds to address what we all want to do, is reduce the cancer burden. And as a cancer center, our goal is to reduce the burden from cancer. I'm a medical oncologist, and sometimes I work on the wrong end of that, dealing with advanced disease. And so I think this conference will hopefully bring us insights into ways in which we can reduce the burden from cancer itself rather than treat it. So I'm very excited to hear it. I think, as Polly mentioned, this will be a chance for discussion, more than just learning about science. What we hope to gain from this is an appreciation for areas that we need to address and then ways to go about addressing that. And so I think the goals of this meeting are not just to share good science and go home and say we learned something, but to say what do we do with this information and how do we move it forward. So please listen, participate. Welcome to Pittsburgh for those of you who don't do it. If you like the weather, this is winter in Pittsburgh, but at least it didn't snow. So welcome, and I'm not going to take much more time because I want to get to hear the talks. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So we have a premise about this meeting, and over the course of the day we want to check in with you on that. But the premise you saw in the materials for the meeting is that translating knowledge about risk factors for cancer, and tobacco is probably our best example of this, into prevention solutions can work. So the process of understanding what those risk factors are and then looking for opportunities for reducing those risk factors has been demonstrated to work in a number of cases, but tobacco being the best example. There's lots of progress in the treatment of disease. Jim's a poster child contributor to that work with the progress on treatment of lung cancer and many other diseases. But there still are worrisome trends that we'll hear about as the day goes on. Increasing lung cancers in people who never smoked, increases in childhood cancer, breast cancer affecting younger and younger women. And we know that environmental carcinogens play a role in this. We don't know everything about them. We do know that they're often overlooked. Cancer prevention strategies often have a mention, if at all, of environmental and occupational exposures. So the purpose of this meeting is to elevate our attention to those occupational and environmental exposures in this region in particular, but to have it be in the context of comprehensive cancer prevention. So we're not suggesting that environment is the only thing that should be focused on. Other opportunities for cancer prevention are essential and promising. It's the integration that needs to happen. And that's why having this much variety of people in the room is how to proceed, because we need to integrate the work that we're all doing, and it's fantastic work, to address this problem, which is particularly prominent here in the region. So that's the premise. We've structured the day to try to move through the foundational science that allows us to do work on this. But by the end of the day, we really want to end up with some recommendations for ways forward. So if we all agree by the end of the day that there's justification for more work on this, we think so, you can tell that. What are the barriers that are getting in the way of our working collaboratively towards goals that we share? And what should that work look like going forward. So we need to think about barriers over the course of the day, but we also really want to be looking toward solutions. There's one piece in your packet which really is just for reference. It's the Asturias Declaration. And this was a meeting held in 2011 in Asturias, Spain. And it concluded that many cancers caused by environmental and occupational exposures can be prevented. Primary prevention, the prevention of the exposures that cause cancer, is the single most effective means of prevention. Primary prevention keeps cancer from ever occurring. Primary prevention saves lives and billions of dollars. And primary prevention depends absolutely on independent, publicly funded research on environmental and occupational causes of cancer. It then moves on to call for a focus on this in countries around the world, and it has 7 recommendations. So this is just as a framework, a motivation for us to say, how might this kind of a thing apply in Southwest Pennsylvania? Southwest Pennsylvania, as is true of everywhere in the world, is its own unique particular place. But if we agree with this basic premise, what's missing from it? What recommendations would we make that apply to Pittsburgh? So we're going to capture people's recommendations over the course of the day. We've asked the speakers to touch on their priorities for research, for policy, for clinical and public health practice, for other more cross-cutting kinds of arenas like communications with the public. We'll have them refer to those recommendations in their talks. And then at lunch, we're going to invite you to begin talking about those. We're going to give you a half hour to enjoy the oxygen in the conservatory, but then we want to invite you back to a half hour of conversation with one another. We have table captains that have been designated at each of the tables who are going to facilitate that conversation. And then we'll continue with our talks, and at the end of the day, we're going to have a panel of 6 regional leaders, again, representing multiple different sectors, and they're going to give us their reflections on what they heard over the course of the day and what their recommendations in those 3 arenas are: research, clinical public health practice, and policy. And then we're going to open it up in a conversation with those panelists to you, so that by the conclusion of the day, we hope to have solid recommendations in those 3 areas. And then we'll talk about where do we go from here. How does this look after we leave this meeting? So that's what to expect.